In this video, we'll be learning how to aggregate data using SQL. And first up, we have count, which counts the number of rows or non-null values in a column. Next up, we have sum, which calculates the total sum of a numeric column. Next up, we have average, which calculates the average value of a numeric column. Min, which finds the smallest value in a column. And lastly, max, which finds the largest value in a column. Without further ado, let's get right on into the video. Okay, so I got my data all set here, and we have our first question up, which is how many inquiries did we receive in our data? So just to sum that up, we are basically have to just figure out how many different types of calls came in. Now, of course, we had more than calls. We had some chat bots, as we see over here to the right. Some were chat bots, some are through the web, email. We want to make sure we're just trying to find everything. So we have to basically find the total count. And if you look quickly, what's great about BigQuery, we get some quick information that we see there's 32,941 rows. But what if we don't have that available, right? What if you're using maybe a different SQL type of server or whatnot, you don't have that available to you? How can we find out how many inquiries we received? So what I'm going to do here is go to the next line. And I got to think, so in this situation, like, okay, what do I have to do here? A little bit different. We have not used any aggregate functions yet in any part of our videos. So some parts will be similar, but there'll be some parts that are a little bit different. So we got to think, okay, inquiries. We have to think, what column do we want to focus on? Because we want to make sure that there are non-null values. So for example, we don't want the score because of the null values in there. It will not properly count it. I think the best column to pick is the ID column because those are all unique and they're all should be in each row, which I have absolutely no problem using that. But because of that, we got to think which of the functions that I just went over before would fit this situation. And for this one, it's the count function. So I'm going to start off, move my cursor to the right. I'm going to start off with select. And I'm going to do the count function. So select count. And I can say, okay, what am I counting? I'm counting the ID column. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm using an alias because I'm going to put this through. Actually, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to run this whole query through, and then we'll talk about the alias afterwards. So we're going to do select count ID, and we got to think, okay, where it's coming from. So use our from clause. And what is the name of our data set? As we do in BigQuery, we start with the database. So SQL course dot data. Close it up. And let's hover over, run it, and take a look. Okay, cool. So we get a result, which is 32,941. But do you see what happened here is there isn't a column header. There's no name, right? Because we put a aggregate function, it'll just come back with whatever comes back with SQL, which we get this F0 underscore. So let's give this a name. So let's think. What do I want to call it? So let's just call this total inquiries. So we're going to write as total underscore inquiries. Let me make sure I spell that right. Because now what's going to happen is, okay, I used an aggregate function on a column. I'm going to give it a new name. So what I'm going to do now is run this through. And we should have a brand new name with total inquiries right here. And let's go take a look. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so you can see right here, total inquiries. That might just be more helpful, especially when you're sending this off to somebody. Make sure it's as clean and organized as possible. And you're not just throwing random numbers at somebody. Okay, so the next question we got here is how many minutes did we spend on call center inquiries? So this one we're getting a little bit, a little more specific here, because like I said, this is a call center, but we have multiple different types of calls that could come in. If we look over here to the right in the channel column, we have call center, email, and web. So we only want to look at call center. So from previous videos, if we're thinking, okay, if we're doing something with a filter, we're going to have to use a where clause in here. But also got to think, how many minutes do we spend? How are we going to figure that out? What column will that tell us? If we look over here to the right, we get call duration in minutes. So if you got to think, if we're trying to add numbers together, we want to use the sum function for that one. So let's go enter. Let's start off with our select. And for this one, just before we use count to find the total inquiries, we're going to use sum. Let's do sum. And we want to add up the call duration column, which is call underscore duration. in minutes. And let's think, what do we want to call this? Let's just call this total minutes, I guess, as total minutes. And like I said, you could write this however you want, whatever works best for you. This could be totally customizable. You could change, you call this whatever, whatever you want. Um, so we are all good there. Let me double check. Yep, that looks good. So we have that down for that. So we got to think, okay, where's this coming from? And as we already know, it's coming from SQL course dot data from our data set. And before we run this through, because this will tell us the total amount of minutes throughout the entire data set, but I don't want the entire one. I just want call center inquiries. So next up, we'll do enter. We'll use the where function, and we'll look at the channel column where channel is equal to, in single quotes, call center. Very good. So just run this through, right? We are going to find the sum of the call duration, we're going to call that total minutes, from our data set where the channel is equal to call center. So let's hover over, run it, and take a look. Okay, so we get our final answer here with 266,000 minutes. So like I said, that might be a random ask someone is just curious about, and then of course we could take that and turn it into hours or whatnot, whatever we gotta do. But that's how you use the sum function within SQL. And it can be very powerful, especially when working with the where clause. And yeah, that's it for that question. Okay, so next up, we have to figure out what was the average call duration on call center inquiries. So this is a little bit different. So we're trying to just look at, like I said, all of the inquiries that were to the call center. But we want to find out the average call, the duration, or basically each individual one. So this one's pretty similar to the last one, except we're using a different function, which if we could think about it based off the wording, we're using the average function. So to kind of jump ahead, I'm going to take the previous query. I'm going to copy it down, make a couple of changes. So let's look this through, right? So a couple things you have to change, right? We're not summing anymore. We're trying to find the average. Change that to AVG. Make sure you remember it's AVG, not like the word average spelled out. Just make sure you do that correctly. And let's change this instead to total minutes. Let's make this average. We're still pulling from call center. Now this number should be very, very small, much smaller, should I say, than the previous one. Should be kind of like 30, 35 minutes. But let's take a look and see what we get. Let's cover up our query and take a look. Okay, cool. So we get 25.04 minutes. So that's the average call length. Now I'm gonna throw in a little teaser in here because I didn't mention this on the beginning slide, but I want to round this number. I'm feeling a little adventurous right now because I don't want this ugly number running on forever. I just want to round it to the nearest whole number. So what I could do here is go up to before average. So you think, right? If you want to bring it to a whole number, we want to round a number. So let's type in round, open our parentheses, and then after that, we have to say, okay, with the round function, how many decimal places do we want to round to? Just to show, for example, I'm going to start off by putting comma 2. That essentially says that I want to round that number to 2 decimal places. And I'm going to run this through. And I'll stay on here with you guys when I do this. Because the whole point of the round part of the function is that number will just round to, like I said, the exact decimal places that you want. So let's take a look, and perfect. Just the way I want it. So we get 25.05. Now let me just make that a whole number because I don't want it like that. Let me go over again. And like I said, this should now just say 25 at the very end. Because, maybe you want to send it off. You don't want to have those 10, 12 decimal places in there. You want just a whole number. And that's exactly what we get. 25 minutes and perfect. So that's how you use the round function. I knew it kind of threw that out of nowhere. But it definitely comes in handy when you're working with minutes or time. Because like I said, we don't want the time to look all kind of weird or crazy and send it off to our manager and it's all, a million decimal places. But that's how you definitely clean it up using the round function. Okay, so next up we have what was the longest and shortest call duration on call center inquiries? So like I said, this one's asking two questions. So we got to think based off the original slide I presented at the beginning, what would make sense here, right? So longest would mean the most, which in this sense would mean max. And then shortest, we want to use min. But we're going to put this all in one query. I don't want to separate it. I don't want two separate queries with one just showing the highest and lowest. I want them both in the same query. So let's think about that. Let's start off with our select and think, right, just to previous ones. I want to do let's do the longest one first. Let's do max call, move my cursor a little bit, duration in minutes. And let's just call this as longest underscore call. And I want to separate this a little bit. I don't want to have a huge run-on sentence here. So I'm going to click enter, and I'm going to space out till right underneath the max. So right here now I'm going to do min of call duration in minutes. We're going to call this as shortest call. Click enter again. And where's this coming from? It is coming from the SQL course data. And actually, you know what? Let's just save ourselves some time here. There we go. Paste it there. So let's look over this again, right? So we have two parts. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit easier to read. Perfect, good. So we have the select function where we're trying to find the max in call duration in minutes as the longest call. So we're trying to figure out what is the longest call from there. And then also the shortest using min. And it has to come from the SQL course data set. And it has to be call center for the channel. So let's take a look at this and see what we get. Okay, perfect. Because, let's say your manager comes to you and has multiple questions. Hey, what was the longest or shortest one? We could quickly get that just within one query. We don't have to keep separating one by one. I know I'm doing this more for a course. So I really want to take my time and separate them, walk them through. But sometimes something like this is pretty straightforward where, okay, we can put them both in there. So we get right there. The longest call was 45 minutes and the shortest one was 5. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see you over on the next video for group by and halving.